All right. Well, as always, if I hit all the right buttons, we are live on YouTube for another Talk Power BI Friday. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe and click the bell so you are notified whenever we go live to answer your Power BI questions, or in this case, to discuss the current and relevant Power BI topics. So today is going to be a very special episode. I'm going to introduce my guests in just a second. I just wanted to check in with all the folks on YouTube. Let me know who's watching. Say hi. Let me know where you're calling in from. Well, you're watching from, and yeah, let me know the audio is working. It's one of those things live. Sometimes I'm talking and something isn't working. So let me know if you can see me, if you can hear me. Okay. I see Asif is online. Vikas Rathore is here. So is Guy Johnson. He's a regular visitor around these parts, these neck of the woods. Sahil says hello. Dana says hi from Missouri. Audio looks good. Guy Johnson gives us a thumbs up on audio and video. And Jazzista says, oh, this is Louis from Covington, LA. And Julian Glass, uh, okay, don't know what that is about. Mark says, hello from Dallas, Texas. And Jen Nabel is here as well. That is terrific. So, all right, my friends. So today is a special episode, and I have some special guests here, and I have my cheat sheet prepared here. So, Kirill Perian actually isn't on yet, so we'll see. Hopefully, he would be able to join. He is slated to be on this call, and he's a founder and data consultant at Data Driven Solutions. We do have Eric Briggs, who's a call center report analyst at a Fortune 500 company. And we have James Hinton from South Africa. He's an owner of an ERP company. And we, of course, have Steve Ross. You've seen him around the channel, and he's been the moderator, and he's joining us in the discussion today. So let's see. All right, cool. Alan Jones, sounds good. People is covered up. All right. So I want to kick it off, and I want to say, first of all, what do you guys think? What is the difference between this old school way of doing things and new way of doing things? Traditional BI, there was a way all companies thought about BI that way, deployed BI that way, but now we have something new, Agile BI, that's the common term. What do you guys think is the difference between the two? Eric, why don't you kick it off? Share with us what you think about what's the difference between these two approaches.
Agile BI, the old way, we had many Excel reports. Things were individualized. If you wanted to compare data, you'd have to pull from multitude of sources, compile it up in Excel, and then send it to whoever needed it. Now
Yeah.
with Power BI, it's already there. It's completed. It's just a matter of dropping what you need into what field. So it's more efficient and faster in terms of getting people what they need.
That's great. James, uh,
Yeah,
welcome
I
to
think
you.
the analogy I would use is moving from cut and paste um,
Mm-hmm.
to something that's live, that is self-sustaining.
Yeah.
So you can just let it run and do its thing once you've developed and designed it. And the only time you really never have to go back to it is if there are major changes to report layouts or the data or something else like that changes. But otherwise, once you've completed it's self-sustaining. It runs by itself, and you can leave it alone. The old Excel, you could never leave it alone. You had to go back and then download the next month, and then make
Yeah.
changes, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the analogy for me is cut and paste, I guess, and in the old way, and not any
Yeah.
longer in the new way.
That's good. I love it. And so I'm one of those guys who feels like, and Steve, I want to get your input as well. But I'm one of those guys who says that you can, you can. Oh gosh, I'm going to mess up this phrase, but you can take a man away from Excel, but you can't take kind of Excel out of him. So I still feel like an Excel user at heart. So I will say that I know we kind of generically use that word to represent the old situation of things. In Excel's defense, though, Excel, the modern Excel, it has all the strengths of Power BI inside. So just anybody who's listening, we might do that. I might do that when I would say, oh yeah, Excel was this. But we were talking about kind of the old Excel, the old world. And again, it doesn't have to be Excel. It could be, I've heard all stories. I will mention some name. Cognos is one I hear often like, oh yeah, so that world was different. So Steve, by the way, folks,
Yes,
I
sir.
always get a kick out of talking to Steve every single time because he works at a horse racing racetrack and he analyzes their data sets and his data sets. Every time he shares, is always I've always find it interesting and so forth. So how does BI, this traditional BI, agile BI, over new world, how does it show up in your work where you are?
Well, Avi, I'm a little different from the other panelists in that
Mm-hmm.
I am. We didn't really have the traditional BI here where I worked.
Okay.
There really wasn't any.
Wow.
Uh, so Agile BI allows me
Yeah.
to do some things that I have never been able to do before. So I'm not really comparing the old with the new. It's
Wow.
the new is all I know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I've never used Excel or to do basic things, but
Mm-hmm.
but what it's done for me is just allowed allowed me to make my workday easier. I data analysis is only a small part of what I do,
Yeah.
and I just kind of enjoy it. So I'm uh, just always looking to move forward, learn a little bit more, but it really
Yeah.
uh, and furthermore, I'll say this. I'll just throw in it's kind of interesting is that there are some people here that I think we've talked about before. I kind of reel them into my office to show them, what I've done, and they're very interested, and they've learned a little bit about Power BI, and they use it themselves every
Mm-hmm.
day. So
Yeah.
in that way, it's good. The end user can take control of the process. So
In,
it's very been very helpful to me.
Indeed. And I think I'll just say it loud. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking it. I mean, you're really lucky. You may not realize it. But what you have done, Steve, is you have leapfrogged ahead. So I'm from India, and I saw this example in India. Here in US, everybody got landlines, and I'm sure it was like a long process, and all the rural areas and urban and suburban, everybody getting landlines, and everybody had phone, and then cell phones arrived. In India, we just leapfrogged over that. Landlines were very scarce, but then everybody did get cell phones. It's crazy. So I think this new world has opened up, as you said, that BI wasn't even an option. I do work with certainly a lot of small and medium business. It wasn't an option. It was just they were kind of getting by, flying by the seat of the pants. Gut instincts was the only way they made decisions. And now that door is open, and I think it's a great thing that they can just leapfrog ahead, and they don't have to do the old painful way where you spend a lot of money, a lot of time, and to get some solution which may or may not even work, and kind of follow the new approach. But what I want to ask you guys, is why is this agile approach, this to avoid that waterfall where, I mean, it was an approach still being used in a big way in a lot of companies where you sit down to gather requirements, you spend many months on that, hundreds of man hours on that, and you have a requirements document, everybody signs off on that. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling the pain bubble up just thinking about it, but this is what was I was a part of, even inside Microsoft for many years. So you do that, and then you go off, build something. It takes a few months, and you come back and you show the client. And inevitably, they say, "Oh no, that's not what we asked for." And then you show them the requirements documents and say, "Hey, yep, no, that's exactly what you asked for." And then they say, "Oh, but that's not what I meant." And you say, "Okay, fine, we're going to do another launch." So this process is still being followed, has been followed for a long time. What is it about Power BI? Is it about the tool? Is it something else? What is it about Power BI that it challenges that it doesn't sit well with that? That if you try to use Power BI in that way, you may not get the best results. So what do you guys? So James, I see you nodding your head. What do you think is the dynamic there? Why does Power BI kind of challenge that in a big way?
I think firstly, you're working with data,
Mm-hmm.
and data is hidden, and to expose data
Yeah.
is a journey. It's never snap once and you've got the data. So
Oh gosh.
it's a journey to
Yeah.
understand what is lurking in tables and files, which is so new to all of us.
Yeah.
And it's only when you start, even when you start with Power Query, and you start looking at tables and you start
Yeah.
importing tables before you even get to visualization,
Mm-hmm.
your mind starts to snap and say, gee, I didn't know that company was collecting that sort of data, or
Yep.
these
Yep.
guys
Yep.
were collecting
Yeah.
these matrices, or these dimensions,
Uh-huh.
or these facts. And once you start that journey, you understand that it is a journey. It's an
Yeah.
exploration, and there's just no way of trying to tell what the end's going to be, because it's when you start, it's hidden.
Yeah.
It's just it evolves.
Yeah, that's beautiful, James. And what you're reminding me of, I was reading someplace where it was talking about the project methodologies and even the tools that we use for project management, and they are kind of old school because they came into being. They were kind of designed at least in US when we had big projects going on where we had to build a dam, and right, I mean, it had to work and it was one thing, and so imagine a project where you're launching a spaceship to the Mars. And sure, frankly, I would know maybe the waterfall is the best approach there, but as James you said, that data is different. It's not like that. It's not like you're trying to launch a spaceship to the moon. It's a journey. So hey,
And
Steve.
also,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, the other thing is, the advent of Scrum as a concept. I don't know. I'm sure
Yeah.
a lot of people are aware of it, but that's a sort of Kanban agile type of
Mm-hmm.
approach. When I was running a manufacturing business,
Yeah.
I used Scrum as a way, even though we knew what the final product needed to be,
Mm-hmm.
and there were, it was a definite product, and
Yeah.
it had specifications and all those sorts of things. Getting there
Yeah.
using an agile approach was also a brilliant way of getting there. So you can actually apply to almost anything, even if you know what the final result should look like, exactly what it should look like. To
Yeah.
get there should be a journey, and Scrum Agile is the way to get there in almost any project, I think.
Got it. All right. So Sam, I'm seeing the comments here, and Steve. Yeah, I mean, if you see something, so folks, if you have any thoughts, comments, by all means post. I may not be able to look at, but that's why we have Steve here. He's going to keep an eye on the comments. So if you have opinions about this, your thoughts or insights, by all means share it with the group so that others can gain from that too. So Eric, let me go to you and tell me kind of on the ground, how have you seen kind of perceptions change or the way people think. Yeah, what change happens in the industry? How do people, yeah, what do you notice when they get in touch with Power BI, when they first see it, when they first start using it? What have you noticed around yourself with others?
For the consumers, a lot of them, they've always had the data because we've always been able to provide it to them as they asked
Mm-hmm.
for. But with Power BI, they have so much more at the touch of their fingertips. And
Yeah.
so now some of them, like one of my direct bosses, he's information hungry, um, because he has all this access to just ways to slice and dice data he never could before.
Yeah.
He's taking that dive and going full
Wow.
speed in trying to find answers.
Wow, love that. So folks, I have witnessed that, and I think that's exactly what Eric is describing. And I witnessed it within Microsoft. So people always think like, oh, we're this company, and yeah, if I was at a different company, whatever. But this was all within Microsoft, where people were essentially discouraged to ask questions, and you would have your wrist slapped if you asked one too many questions because it was really hard to get answers, and people hated having to walk out of a meeting with a ton of action items. And over time, through explicit or implicit clues, you get trained to not ask questions. And Eric, so I love that story where the person you're working with, it kind of opened up the Pandora's box for them, and that links back to what James was saying, that it is a journey. And my friends, like any journey, the fun is in it's not really in the destination. It's in the, you got to enjoy kind of the process. And so that's what Eric is describing, that the person is just kind of reveling and just going to the next level, and so forth. All right, cool. Let's see. So again, folks online, if you're watching, let us know if you have any questions for us around this topic. So I wanna move on to a different topic, and so this is a pet peeve of mine. Really drives me up the wall, which is a lot of times people understand that we should be doing it differently. They sometimes often know the term agile or scrum or one of these new ones, and sometimes they even put that label on. They say, "Oh yeah, this is, we're having scrum meetings daily or something like that." But when I really see what they're doing, it is still very old school. They're still trying to line up all their ducks in a row, and they're still spending an year or more sometimes just building a warehouse. And they come to me and like, "Oh, Avi, we spent the last year building the data warehouse. Now it's ready. Now we're ready for self-service BI." And I just, kind of have that bomb face moment. I hope James joined back, where it's like, gosh, that's so frustrating. So Steve, Eric, have you seen that phenomena where people have the best intentions, but they're still stuck in that old loop? Steve, have you kind of seen that,
Yeah,
or
yeah, absolutely. And I would say here, sometimes they don't have the best intentions either. They're really stuck.
okay,
I mean,
okay,
they're just stuck in the old way of doing it.
they can't
And
think beyond that. They just can't. It's not real
well,
for
they
them.
they just don't know. They just don't. They just
Hmm.
they don't even know what
They don't know any better.
Power Pivot, Power BI is.
Yeah, they just
And
know and
and
live that copy paste, right? That's James was talking about. They're like, well, this is how I do
yeah,
reports. I
and
copy it here, paste it here,
I
boom.
mean, I'll tell you something funny. I mean, I
Hmm.
gave something to our senior accountant. It was in Power Pivot. It wasn't a Power BI because she's used to Excel. Uh, and these numbers that were in this table,
Hmm.
she couldn't understand how I arrived at them. She thought that I typed them all in,
Oh, that's
hard
amazing.
coded numbers.
Okay,
And
okay.
I said, well, it's Excel, but it's not the Excel you're thinking about. It's
Yes.
a spreadsheet, but it's
Oh.
not really a spreadsheet.
Oh my God, I love that. So how
And
many
then,
how many of you here probably all have had that experience where you send them an Excel file which has a Power Pivot model, and they see the pivot tables, and they love it, but they contact you back and say, "Where's the data? I can't find the data." And
well, or
yeah,
there's no formulas. These numbers are all hard coded.
yeah.
Yeah, I typed in,
Oh gosh, that's funny.
thousands of,
Yeah,
numbers.
yeah, yeah,
Copy and
yeah.
Sure.
paste. Yeah.
All right, all right. So just
And,
that's great. Jazista, I want to give a shout out to with I think it was Louis with that screen name. Yeah, he liked what you said and said, "Hey, I'm having the same issue at work. Bunch of low tech accountants using pivot tables, and it's not like we don't want them to use pivot tables, but I see this new world as like Excel and Power BI. The new world I see them being used in combination, where you can take Power BI to kind of smooth out all the rough edges, all the copy paste issues that you had, and now you got. And again, you can do that inside Excel. It's got Power BI built in, and you can do it there, and you can combine it with there. So what we did with Microsoft Finance team was we built the model. Now it became the single source of truth, and now they could connect all the pivot tables to that. But now they were not creating many versions of the truth, different reports flying around everywhere. It was all connected to the same source, and really easy and light. Cool. So that knowing doing gap, that's what I call it, and I want to stick with that. And James and Eric, have you seen that where people have the right intentions, but they kind of mess it up. They go back to those old habits.
Yeah, I mean, for where I work, they're starting to adopt Power BI fairly well, and we're getting on board. We're kind of in that twilight zone of
Mm-hmm.
figuring out how we're going to deliver everything. But the biggest
Yeah.
thing is ever since I got into Power BI, before when we did all our Excel-based reports, pivot tables, pie charts, all that kind of thing. Well, when you're building a dashboard, it's kind of a different mindset of how you have to display and communicate this information because it's a lot.
Yeah.
So I've been reading this book by Stephen Few,
My
and
favorite.
he's amazing. I love that guy. And so I've been implementing some best practices from a couple of his books, like bullet charts and
Mm-hmm.
those sort of things. And upper management, they're just not familiar with it. They want their pie charts and all these
Yes.
other silly little things back, and try to tell them, look, it's you can't effectively tell me by looking at that what's the bigger number.
Yeah, I know. And then they folks put a label on it. And I'm like, seriously? If they're reading the label, then just
Yes.
use the label. What's the chart there for? Um, yeah, that is certainly a challenge. I mean, I faced that too, and I'll say I give in. I mean, I'm working with clients or somebody, and I put a pie chart on there. I'm like, what are you gonna do? That's pretty cool. So, James, what are your thoughts on this? What have you seen where as people go through this, the resistance, either kind of consciously or subconsciously, which kind of they become their own worst enemy, where they're not doing the right things, which will allow them to move as fast as Power BI as you can. And boy, you can move incredibly fast. So actually, before I'll share a quick story. This gentleman was in one of my Power BI classes, and he asked a lot of questions. This was at a healthcare company, and he stayed in touch with me for a while after that. But he kept complaining that how it was really hard to make progress in his company because there was all this red tape, and IT had a different idea about how these things should be used. And then I got an email from him a while, sometime later, and he said, "Oh, I'm now consulting with this other healthcare company, a competitor of ours, but hey, who cares?" And we're making amazing progress. And he said, "It's amazing how fast you can go if you can get out of your own damn way." So, James, do you see that where people are just getting in their own way, which is stopping them from getting the best out of Power BI?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm an accountant by profession and training. So, and I can see, that the world depended upon return on equity and those sorts of things, and numbers and
Mm-hmm.
sales and growth in sales and pie charts and things like that. So, historical sort of data, you know, also a lot of rules and regulations about how it should be displayed in financial statements and all that. So we all grew up
Yeah.
in that sort of reporting world, which is a very static world that tells you about history.
Yes.
And generally, it was very, very late. It was like 6 months after the event. And then added to that, I think there's a lot of cynicism with IT and apps generally
Mm-hmm.
in the business world, especially. Guys coming along and saying, "I've
Yeah.
got this thing that's going to save you and your day and make your company better," and all that. And many have been so disappointed. And I think ERP systems are largely to blame for that and bad implementations. And so when you come along with this newfangled idea, they
Yeah.
don't believe it. I just don't think it's possible. And that's, I think, what Steve was alluding to. With the accountant, with the hardwired numbers in the
Mm-hmm.
spreadsheet. It's not possible in their minds. It's not possible. Can't be done. Never has been done.
Yeah.
And if it is, it's crap. It's a lie. So there's something lurking there. You're going to charge me all this money, but it's not going to work. And that, I think, is the biggest issue. And especially like in sort of third world countries like we are, the
Mm-hmm.
adoption rate of these things is so slow, and people just not aware of these things. And then all of a sudden, as you say, like in India, everybody's got a cell phone. It'll happen here eventually, and we'll leapfrog. But it's really difficult. It's a difficult sell here. It really is. It's not easy. It's not easy to convince people that you've got something and it's worth investing in that's going to really
Yeah.
make a difference to them.
Man, I'm stunned to hear that. I want to dig in a little bit more on that. Yeah, I'm just going to read out. Jen is saying, my boss is an accountant using pivot tables. Lucky for me, he's interested in learning Power BI, so that's good. She does say she's about the only one though, but that's all right. It all kind of starts with this one person. But this dynamic of where James is talking about, where they're not open to this new idea. I think I have a clue as to where it might come from, and I'll say initially I might have had the same resistance. And folks who watching on YouTube, I want you to back me up if you've experienced this. So in my long journey as a business analyst, mostly heavily using Excel, I felt like I was duped so many times. And if you've been at a company or if for many, many years, you see these cycles, like 3 to 5 year cycles. Sometimes if it's short, it's a 1 year cycle where often it will be like somebody new came in, like new CTO, new CIO, or whatever, something like that, and they would say, "Oh, thou shall use this tool." And they have been sold to by some fancy salesman with a fancy sales deck, and they're like, "Oh, look, this is going to be awesome. It's going to solve all your problems." So the word comes down, and now we're all using those tools, and we all do make an effort to use that tool, but we quickly realize that it doesn't quite cut it. And pretty soon, the most often feature in that tool is that export to Excel button. Sometimes it masquerades as export to CSV. Well, that has nobody fooled. It's all going to Excel, and that's what it does. So that tool stays as the official BI tool for a while, but everybody kind of is using Excel and getting by with that. And then of course 3 years later, or somebody recognizes that this is a mess. And of course they bring in a new tool. So it feels like we've been duped so many times. We promised the world and didn't get anything, that the next time the next thing comes along, we say, you know what, no thank you, I've seen this before. So have you guys, is that what it is? Why else would they resist something which is gonna be so transformative for them? Eric, have you experienced
I've
that?
got another idea.
Yeah,
Sorry
yeah,
to
go ahead.
butt in,
No, no, go ahead.
but I think that a lot of corporates are sort of politically charged. And I think that whereas data or knowledge is power, I think data has become power. Um,
Whoa.
and and I think that although they may say they've got flat structures, they're highly bureaucratic, and they're highly politicized. Most organizations, and there's a scrambling for resources and recognition and all those sorts of things. So guys that are undoing all that stuff and cutting to
Yeah.
the chase and cutting through
Yeah.
layers are seen as quite a threat, I think,
Troublemakers.
in
Yeah.
many, yeah, in many organizations, especially to their bosses. And so the whole idea of democratizing data and
Uh-huh.
the effect thereof, effectively, in some ways, it's going to put people up the ladder out of a job. What I would call the corridor men, that walk around with a flip file under their arm, and they've got all the knowledge. They know the stuff. They've got the data, and they'll tell you what you want to know. but
Wow.
but they filter it. I'm being cynical, I know, but I honestly think that is an issue. I
Oh
really do.
boy. No, no, that's the real thing there. Eric, what's your experience been at your company?
Well, to add to what James was saying earlier is, yeah, I think that's a big part of what makes people so afraid is we had this tool we were using for a while for text analytics,
Mm-hmm.
and we thought it was going to be great. We're going to be able to go scrub all these case notes. It's going to do it automatically. Agents that are just putting whatever in the case notes, this
Mm-hmm.
will fix that. Well, we got the tool, and it just too hard to use, didn't work.
Yeah.
They spent a boatload of money on it, and it just didn't pan out. A lot of time was spent trying to learn the tool and get it proficient enough. It just flopped. Um, but I think that's what Power BI, a good thing to go back to the Agile, is it's pretty easy to pick
Exactly.
up and
Exactly.
get off the ground running.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
And
even
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'll just say even self-learning, you can do a lot of
Absolutely.
basic stuff on your own and get what you need.
Mhm.
Obviously, if you go through training, it puts you over the
Yeah.
moon, but
Yeah. That's true. I mean, and yeah, I mean, I certainly love Barbie for that. It was seemed very approachable. Um, yeah, I mean, very approachable, very accessible. The first time, simplest of things, right? I mean, when you discover distinct count, I'm like, oh my gosh. And when you discover relationship, like, oh gosh, right? So those small things just make a huge impact. I've had students who join the course and kind of one day after they say, hey, this is something which was taking me a week because I would spend 4 days dreading doing it manually, the copy paste way, and then spend one actual day doing it. It took me 5 days, and now it's just, it took me a day to set it up in Query Editor because I'm new, but now I just click a button. So that's great. I'll share a quick story. So James, what you talked about, where often it gets political, and man, I mean, gosh, that word is gold, my friend. What James said, like data is power, so knowledge is power. I mean, knowledge is data transformed, right? So Data is the new oil. It's a new currency. That's where the power is, and I think the power players realize that. So unfortunately, I think that sometimes people do jockey for that. That ooh, I'm gonna be it. So hilarious story. So I just heard it from one of the new students who joined. So in their company, they're kind of evaluating Power BI and Tableau. Actually, they're evaluating Tableau. So they're evaluating Tableau, and here's this one person, kind of this lone hero, who discovered Power BI, and they held a BI competition, some sort of BI competition in there. And out of like hundreds of entries, this person came in second, not because their solution was inferior than the number one, but the but the Tableau folks in Power, they dare not give the number one prize to a Power BI entry, so they had to kind of pip him at number two. And then he was getting calls from those people saying like, hey, can you tell us how do you do that thing in Power? So they were trying to recreate that in Tableau, struggling with that a little bit. And again, not to throw Tableau under the bus at all, it's a great tool, but each has its own fit. I mean, each has its own strengths. So yeah, that's great. So folks, let's kind of bring it home. And the note that I want to end things on is that given all of this, so this was a great discussion. I mean, I got a lot out of it. Hopefully, the YouTube audience too, folks. If let's see, actually, if we can quickly scan some of the comments. So wow, a lot of comments came in while I wasn't looking. Okay, yeah, Manila agrees with me. A lot of people define Power Pivot because of distinct count. Yeah, and this is one of those things. So I discovered Power BI in the form that it was back then, Project Gemini, which became onto Power Pivot, because I had over 1 million rows, and of course I discovered it because of that. But then I quickly realized that this is so much more. What else? All right, cool. So Jen is saying, yep, it's kind of hard to sometimes move and convince people. Perfect. And Brian has this idea, which I have certainly used, that sometimes instead of trying to convince them, show them, just do a mini project and just build something with them with their own data, and that's more convincing than anything else. Cool. So folks, if you have any more comments, any more questions, do post them in the thread. But I wanna bring it home and ask our panelists here, ask our experts here, given all of this, given the situation that it's in and the challenges and the amazing opportunities, what's the best thing that people can do right now, either as an individual or kind of within their company? So Steve, let's start with you. What would you say? What advice would you have for somebody who's starting out, either on this journey for themselves or trying to deploy Power BI within their company?
Well, for an individual, I would say just take satisfaction in the small successes, because that's how I started.
Yeah.
Where I was thrilled just to be able to unpivot a table.
Ooh, that does blow my mind.
And that meant something to me, because it saved me aggravation.
Uh-huh.
And then I just gradually, I mean, truthfully, guys, maybe it's been a year and a half since I've been exposed to all of this. I didn't know what a pivot table was before starting this, and that's sort of what led me into it.
Yeah.
I said, "Whoa, pivot table," and then pivot table. You do a little research. There's Power Pivot.
Yeah.
And one thing leads to another.
Yeah.
But I just find it very interesting. Just the small things that I've been. I would say I'm no better than an advanced beginner, but yet I've been able to do some pretty nice things that I'm proud of, and I see that with other people. There are some people in my organization that are very interested. When they see something, they're like, "Whoa, I can really use that," and they've gone on to become they're relative novices, but they're very happy with it. So I would just say, like anything else, be aware that just a tiny bit of knowledge can pay off in a big way.
Yes, right.
And don't get frustrated by it. If you look at all that's out there in Power BI, you start looking at the fanciest of dashboards, and
it boggles your mind. It
Oh
boggles
my God.
mine.
And like some of these DAX expressions that people have
Page
written,
long, yeah.
forget
Like, what
about
is
it.
that?
Forget
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. Just small
So
steps.
don't do that.
Love
Don't
it.
do that.
Love it.
Focus on the fundamentals. Just get some small successes, and
Yes.
you'll be happy. And then
Yes.
you just slowly build on that at whatever pace you want to go.
Love
And
that.
like Eric said, there's a lot of information out there. There's no shortage of YouTube videos and articles that
Yeah.
for the
Just get
person who's
started.
interested.
Hmm.
And look, the software is free. There's
That's right.
no investment.
Yeah, that's a good point
Cash.
though. Yeah, so thank you, Steve. Love that. Just a quick note on the software. I mean, people often come to me as like, oh, we got to figure out the licensing thing, and I'm like, have you even evaluated Power BI? Go download Power BI desktop, see if it even works for you. Maybe it wouldn't work for you. What do you know? All right, Eric, what is your thoughts on it? What would you say to somebody who's kind of starting out, either for themselves or they're looking to deploy Power BI within their organization? What would be your advice to them?
Um, you're always going to get people that are a firewall or going to try to discourage you. And I'm going to say, don't get discouraged. Keep pushing it.
Yeah.
They will see the value eventually.
Uh-huh.
I fought it where I work for months,
Yeah.
months and months and months, and I
Wow.
finally got somebody hooked,
Yeah.
and that's all it took. Just the right
Unbelievable.
person's gonna spark that fire, and
Yes.
you'll get it in your company. Um,
Wow.
you're gonna
Love
you're
that.
gonna run into frustrations,
Mm-hmm.
but like Steve was saying, start simple.
Yeah.
And nice thing about Power BI, it is a live, interactive community. Um, that I think was the
Wow.
biggest turn on
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. So that's great, man. There's so much packed into it. So now I feel privileged because as a consultant, I can, if somebody's not interested or they hit me like, oh, Tableau is so much better, or weird stuff like Cognos is way better. I'm like, good for you, man. And I move on. But when you're working in a company, you don't have that privilege. And of course, I remember I kind of fought the same battle, and yeah, it can be frustrating. So Eric, do you have like what's the approach if somebody's not convinced? Do you try to kind of find somebody else, find somebody who is a little more open to it, or do you try to show them some of their data? What are you doing like over the months to kind of hit them again and just try to win them over?
Well, I did a couple things. I mean, a big part of maybe the reason why they don't like it is because they don't understand it. So you have to,
Oh,
it was hard for me.
love
I
it.
had to step out of my
Yeah.
report analyst kind of position and go into a teacher kind of
Yes.
role
Yes.
and show them, hey, look,
Yeah.
I can give this to you in Excel, but if
Hmm.
I give it to you this way, look what you can do.
Oh
And then
man.
immediately
Yeah.
they're like, oh, wow, that's
Wow.
amazing.
Wow. That is big, guys. I'm gonna sit in there for a second because I think I need that lesson in a big, big way. So yeah, I think you gotta see it from their perspective. They may not know. It's not like they don't like it and blah and that they're closed or whatever. Before that, I think you gotta put all those aside, and those feelings do bubble up when it feels so frustrating. Is that they just need to be told. So I do often get this comment like, "Oh, I can do this in Excel." But if you just kind of gently, politely say, "Yep, you can do that in Excel," but what about this, this, and this? And usually it just blows them away. So I love that. Oh gosh, that is so good. I'm gonna go back and listen to this part, Eric. But I know I need it because. And again, guys, so often I say, and I'm so glad to have this presence here because yeah, I mean, I have walked on this journey so long that I've forgotten some stuff, which was hard, and it's second nature to me. So James, let's end with you, my friend. So, what would your advice be for somebody starting out as an individual or a company?
I think two things. You know, when you start out, think of yourself as an individual. Forget
Hmm.
about the company,
Okay. Oh wow. All
and,
right. Be
and
selfish. All right.
and then find a way, a comfortable way of learning how to do it, because
Hmm.
um, there is such a proliferation of YouTube videos and articles and blogs and books, and it is completely overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I got into that situation, and I just used to, I don't know
Yeah.
where to turn, which YouTube video to watch next,
Yeah.
and those sorts of things, which book to buy, which
Uh huh.
paragraph to read,
Yeah.
and so here I'm going to give you a plug, Avi. I'm going to say that really calm down and get on a course. And
Hmm.
and I've been on Rob Colley's course. I've tried a number of courses, and yeah, I would go with you, Avi. I would get on your course, calm
Yeah.
down, and do it,
Yeah.
and do it as an individual.
Yeah.
And once you've done that and you're hooked, which if you like data, you'll become hooked. Then, in terms of selling it to the company, I think you're on your way because you would have developed a passion by then.
Yeah.
And once you've got a passion, people buy that stuff. And when
Yeah.
you are selling it, I think it's more a case of show
Yeah.
than tell. And
I love
also,
it.
try and be their teacher. So you go to them and you say, look, why don't we do this, and I'll show you how to do it, and you'll be
Yeah.
amazed what you can do if I show you how to do it, type of thing. Those are my two bits of advice, I'd say.
Oh man, that's so wonderful. Um, okay, so I almost lost my train of thoughts. So yeah, I think it goes back to what Steve was saying. So guys, overwhelm is a real problem. So I'm going to go in confession mode for a bit. And at the beginning of last year, I think I felt completely overwhelmed because this is when Power BI, the vision had just kind of expanded, and it has expanded even broader since then, right? So it wasn't just Power BI anymore. Now that we're talking about kind of Power Apps and Power Flow and this whole ecosystem, and I felt like, hey, heck, I call myself the Power BI Pro. I got to know it all, and I was frankly not making any progress because that's the problem with overwhelm. It just shuts you down. So I was making zero progress. I was panicking more than anything else, and I'm glad I ran into Bill Jelen, Mr. Excel. And I was just talking to him about something else, and I'm not sure where the comment came from, but suddenly he said, Avi, I don't know Excel. And I'm like, what's he talking about? But then he was just giving the dramatic pause, and then he completed a sentence. He said, I don't know all of it. And I just took a deep breath and I said, you know what? I gotta give myself permission to. You don't have to know all of it, right? And as Steve has said, and we've said it multiple times in here, it's kind of the concept. You know a little bit, you can still. It's the impact that matters. You can still have a big impact. So James, and now I remember what I was thinking of when you were talking this example of airlines. When you're flying in your airplane, they say, hey, if the oxygen masks come down, you gotta put the oxygen mask on yourself first, right? I mean, there's nobody else we love more than our kids, but you gotta put your mask on yourself before you even help your kids. So I like that James' point that it's I think it's the right point to
Mhm.
be selfish at that stage where you're starting out, where you put the mask on yourself, get that level of capability. And again, we've all said, hey, whatever floats your boat. I mean, I would recommend like structured learning too. Otherwise, it becomes a case of like
Yeah,
learning with jigsaw puzzles, kind of Google and
no
YouTube.
question.
Mhm.
But any way you do it, everybody has their own style. And once you get to that level of capability, that's when you can do things like Eric was talking about, where you can break down those walls, right? With just loving patience. Awesome. Great. So let's just go for some of the comments here. So I'm going to pick up. So, Steve, if you saw something else interesting earlier, point that out. But I'm going to go with Manuel Finta's comment. So he's saying, hey, we're rolling it out in sales. How do you best gather requirements? So, do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that goes exactly where we're going. I think look at if you're starting it in sales, I think go and look at the data and see
Mm-hmm.
what data is in sales.
Okay.
When you say sales, what do you mean? I mean, what is the data that's sitting there? What does it represent? What processes does that data represent? And I think
Totally.
that's a big thing coming back to Agile is to think of these things in terms of a system and a process approach as
Yeah.
opposed to a sort of linear model.
Yeah.
To think about what are the underlying processes that are happening that give rise to this data. And then
Wow.
if you start thinking systems like that, I think it
Mm-hmm.
makes it so much easier. Then you start that exploration and you say,
Yeah.
well, I don't know what the requirements are. Yeah, they can be
Uh huh.
anything, but let's just see what's there,
Yeah.
and let's see, well, all of a sudden what we can do with what's there. And that then will lead to, then you
Yeah.
forget about the requirements. The requirements
Yeah.
are as data. That's the only requirement
Yeah.
is clean data.
Wow. So guys, I mean, man, I need to stick that on like a loop and hear it many times. And it's odd that I do approach it that way, but until I heard it from James, I didn't quite see it that way. So when I saw the question, automatically I was thinking requirements. Well, I know how to gather requirements. I've seen others do it and I've done it myself. You go to the people and ask them what they want. But James took a totally counter approach. And Eric, Steve, do you have any thoughts on that? Is it a crazy idea? He didn't really mention talking to users at all. He's just go to the data. What do you think about that?
Um, maybe it works for James. Not myself so much. I get
Mm-hmm.
lost in the forest with the amount of data that I have at my fingertips. So
Uh huh.
I sometimes have to slow my roll a minute,
Yeah.
and I go back to my basics.
Uh huh.
I have a list that from one of Stephen's Few's books that say,
Awesome.
assess what's needed,
Yes.
begin with the definition. You have to have a clear goal.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on
Yeah.
the goal, not the means, that sort of thing. And it steps you through. If you go in there blind,
Yeah.
at least for me,
Yeah.
I get lost and then you end up info blasting on that, on that page. And then people, oh, what's this? This is crappy. I don't want to look
Yeah.
at it.
Yeah, now that's great. I'm trying to kind of process it too. So in one sense, I kind of agree 100% with James that yeah, I mean, so in my conferences, I've been known to say things like when I'm sitting down with a client, I ignore 95% of what they say, which is kind of true because I write it down for later because mostly what they're telling me is the report they want. Like, oh yeah, we want a line chart here, we want this number, that number. And initially, I have zero interest in that. My only interest is what the model is going to look like, the shape it's going to have. Here's my data table. So I'm only looking for those pieces, and that's very small. But as I go through the journey, yeah. So this is, and again, guys, I've been doing it for so many years, but for one, I'm always learning from my students, so that's awesome. So Eric, I love
So,
that. And you know the piece where you said what the goal is? So I've started to do this when I'm designing the visualization side, where I in bold text I put up top what question is this sheet gonna answer? You know what is
mhm.
the goal kind of way. So go ahead. You were gonna say something.
Oh, I was gonna I agree with you. Like at least for my company, they'll info blast say I want this, and this, and most of the
Yeah.
crap they don't need.
Yes.
You have to
Yes.
go through, bury through the dirt or whatever and find out what it is they're actually wanting. So I think your rule still applies. 90% of what they said,
Yeah.
probably
Yeah. So
garbage.
so that's yeah, that's
It's
good.
it's our job to find that
Yes.
that little area to report on.
That's good. Yeah. So guys, yeah, I think you got to differentiate between kind of what they want because they want a lot of things and right,
Hmm.
but what they need. And yes, it is hard because sometimes they would want a pie chart, and you have to give them a pie chart. But kind of want and need. Oh, I had another thought, but I'll let one of you guys speak. So James, Steve, any other thoughts around this? Man, been a great discussion already.
Yeah, when I say look at the data, I mean look at the dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
Not the rows, the columns.
Yeah.
That lets you understand, what is being captured, and all of a sudden you start to think of mashing up stuff that has never been mashed up before.
Yeah.
And that's what looking
Mm-hmm.
at the table structures and the data model that you're talking about. Once you start to get familiar with what's in there,
Yeah.
not the numbers, but the
Uh huh.
structure
Mm-hmm.
of what it looks like, you start to form a picture of what's possible,
Yes.
which is completely different to what you thought was possible or anybody else thought was possible
Oh,
when they came along and said, I want a report that looks like this. I can have
yeah.
it, but the whole power of Power BI is that you're going to get something that you never dreamed of getting, generally, more often than not. It's going to show you stuff that you never dreamed you'd have. So if you start with this process of saying, I want a report that looks like this, you're completely limiting the possibilities of
Love it.
what the data can display or show.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean,
I
and I see people who design reports in Power BI, and they're totally missing the mark. They, if all you're doing is using Power BI just to create reports, the idea is to create a model, and once you have that, it can create any report you want.
It's like
Steve,
Lego blocks.
yes,
yeah, I
that's
love that
right.
analogy. Yeah. So Steve, did you
Yes.
have any other thoughts, or did you see any other comment or question scroll by, which we would love to like to answer here?
Well, there were some interesting comments that I think everyone would agree with. The importance of understanding your data. What are you dealing
Yeah.
with? Now,
Yeah.
if you're doing a report, if you're working for someone else, you may not be intimately familiar with all of the fields. And I
That's
do
right.
think that's very important. Is to
Yeah.
and that's one of the problems you've commented on this when you work with sample data sets.
Uh-huh.
Even as a novice, when you're learning,
Oh gosh, yeah.
I, I try to take, even if I'm learning a new concept, I try to apply it to data that I'm familiar with and
Real
not
data.
use the data that's in the
Yeah.
AdventureWorks or whatever, because it
Yeah.
just makes a bigger impact on me.
Mm.
I think I
Yeah.
get it better when it's stuff that I'm familiar with.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I see nodding heads everywhere. So guys, the analogy that I use, folks who are watching, is learning tennis. And you can go there and hit the ball against the wall. I think that's what working with the sample data set feels like, right? It's just, okay, I'm gonna go download this airline traffic and whatever and do something with it. And then a real
Yeah.
data, real project with a real client you can talk to, and sometimes the client can be you. It is like a real tennis match. There's going to be another player there, and you go back and forth. That agile cycle we've been talking about it all this call, and that's great. So the thing about understanding data, and I'll ask you guys, and of course watching on YouTube, if you've had this experience where I would sit down with a client, internal or external, when I was in Microsoft or outside as a consultant, and I would start working with their data, and then I would say like, "Oh, I see this works this way," and they would say, "No, no, no, it doesn't work that way," and I would go, "Are you sure?" So sometimes the data tells you a lot more than they think they know. I mean, have you guys had that where the data had kind of the true picture when even the people were missing it? Cool. All right.
Yeah, I think data is if you think of it as a factual representation of
Yeah.
processes, uh, that, yeah, that's why I think that's why that happens.
All right. Love it, guys. Any other thoughts before we close it out on your side? All right, terrific. We call it good. Hey, I want to
Good.
thank each
All right.
one of you. So, folks, the uh, the the links are gonna be. I should have added it in our earlier, but the video you're watching right now, we're gonna put the links to these amazing folks. Well, Kirill didn't show up, but he's an amazing guy, and I'll add more info to Steve. And so, if you want to reach out and connect with them, you heard, and it's clear that these are thought leaders in this industry. So yeah, go ahead and kind of reach out and connect with them, and we'll put these links in our video as well. So Steve, James, Eric, thank you so much. So we're gonna go into a Q&A mode. I'll hang out for a little bit to see if there are any other questions which folks want to ask. But if you gotta go, again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Avi.
Thank you very much, Avi, and
Thank
thanks
you.
for having me. It was great.
Awesome. Whew. Guys, that was an adventure. I mean, I learned so much, and I think it's one of those things where you have to not just learn these lessons, but relearn them. And yeah, I'm definitely going to go back and listen to these calls. So if anybody has any question, and I was also waiting for Anastasia. I don't know if you showed up because we were trading comments back and forth on YouTube, and you had a specific question that you needed help with. Vikas is saying, do I organize live training? I do corporate training. And yeah, so if you have a need for that, reach out. If somehow I'm busy, I can definitely connect you with tons of other resources and experts who can help you with your consulting or training needs. So yeah, definitely just reach out to me, Avi at avising.com. All right, folks. So yeah, I'm gonna wait maybe a few minutes, see if you had any other questions. I'm gonna scroll back, see if there was something else. So anything around this or general around Power BI. So Nirav, you had a question earlier: how to provide security in Power BI desktop software. That's a great question. Now, Power BI desktop, as far as Microsoft is concerned, is an authoring tool, and so you're supposed to author it, and then you're gonna share it using typically their powerbi.com platform, or they have on-premise options as well. So it's for authors. There's, oh gosh, I'm inclined to say that there is no way to provide security in there, although there might be. So I'll come back and talk about that. But generally, security isn't going to be in the Power BI desktop. It's going to be in your PowerBI.com layer, where you can control who gets access to the report. You can control it through that way, or you can control at a more granular level using row level security. So let me bring up powerbi.com as well. So that's the stock answer, but let's think out of the box and say, hey, can you provide security in Power BI desktop? So I'm gonna write it down. Let's try it here. Oops. So this was Nirav Gandhi asking about security in PBI desktop. I should have done this. Oops, I misspelled his name. I won't do that. So first of all, the option is, oops, let's try that again, is you provide security through PowerBI.com, not the desktop, or of course, if you have an on-premise server. But if you think out of the box, and let's see if you guys are going to have some ideas too, is you could create copies of PBIX file, and sometimes I've seen where you set a parameter, and so yeah, I mean, again, not elegant, it's kind of ugly, but I've seen people do that, where they would have same PBX file, but then they'll say, oh, I want this data set to only have I don't know, e-commerce data, and that would filter it down, or only US data, and they would filter it down, and then they would give that copy to the US folks. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it, from the way you're asking it, I don't think it's applicable for you, but the way you can do that is you can use Power BI Desktop, and actually the data source, you can connect it to SSAS tabular, and you can use direct query, not import, and then the security is provided by SSAS tabular. Actually, you know what? I think that is being done by some of my clients, because they don't want to invest on PowerBI.com. They don't want to pay anything more for PowerBI.com or on Power BI on-premise report server. They already have SSAS tabular. Now they do like the visualization of Power BI desktop. So again, the way you can do that is create a Power BI desktop file which is connected to SSAS tabular using direct query, and the security is provided by that layer. And of course, SSAS tabular is really robust with security. So let's see if there are any other crazy ideas. Okay, so let's pick the last one. Awesome. So Vikas, let's take Guy's question. One thing I tried was to sort the data by day of the week to show the true power. Okay, so that was just a comment. Yes, I love, so man, that's a beautiful comment. So a lot of times I go in, and it's like, so many of these folks, Steve James, they both talked about the journey. So I see, kind of the people that I work with that go on this journey. Initially, they would say they would have like a monthly report, and that's all they're saying, like January, February, March. They're like, we always look at it at my month level. Now, of course, they do that because it wasn't possible to look at the more detail. But I go in, and of course, with Power BI, I give them the monthly view that they're happy with. I often try to give them exactly what they're used to looking, so to minimize the impact of change. And I usually give Power BI as something new. So I'll say, hey, here's the old stuff you're used to, and often I build the reports in Excel connected to Power BI. So it looks almost exactly the same, although under the hood it's been transformed, and then I give them the new stuff separately. That way, they're not comparing the old and new. It's something new, and they can decide it. They can kind of make up their own mind rather than comparing the two. I don't want them to compare it.
Good idea.
Yeah, and then in the new stuff, I would throw in exactly what Guy is talking about. Hey, what about your weekday? Did you know that Wednesdays are your most profitable days? Something like that, and which they haven't seen. So love that. All right, Vikas has a question. I'm a little bit confused about measures. I know what they are from your video, but whenever I create one, I find error in syntax. Therefore, to create columns. Yeah, that's a good point. So, guys, I wouldn't hide my love for measures. I love measures. Love them. Let's go here. measures. I'm trying to think of a smart alliteration to measures. I can't think of anything. Measures measures not working. So how about this? So I'll talk about it, but so because if you so this is something new that we have tried. If you go to talkpowerbi.com and you sign up, we call it the Insiders Club, and actually I'm pretty excited about that. You would have the ability to call in and we can talk. So try that. If you go to let's try this. Okay, let me put that in the chat as well. So because if you sign up, you can try calling in. All right, cool. So and I will activate the phone line in case you are able to call in. Okay, let's try this. Nope, not happy. Hold on, guys. Okay, it's not gonna work. All right. Anyway, so let's come back here. Well, so for one, gosh, measures. Why are they challenging? What's going on with my? Oh. So yes, because man, I really want to help you because I think your life is going to change once you go from columns to measures. So again, this is all in my on my channel. Let's see, Power BI Pro. Oops, no, not that. So and because said he has gone through my videos, and of course, I mean maybe in my course I go into more detail, but I think we should be able to help you right now. And I don't know why this is so hard. YouTube. All I'm trying to do is show you my YouTube channel. There we go. Oops, not the live page. This one. So folks, the stuff that I'm going to talk about, measures, calculated columns, it's pretty much covered in my tutorial playlist as well. But sometimes, we just need to hear it again, and sometimes we need to hear it maybe slightly differently. So it's nothing new, but I'll go into that, and we'll see if that helps Vikas. And again, Vikas, if you go to talkpowerbi.com, if you can get on the phone, we'll see if we can talk that way. But let's do it this way. So columns, calculated columns. And frankly, I don't remember the last time I did calculated columns, because even when they are needed, I create them in the query editor, because I really think that's the right place to kind of clean shape and transform your data. So there are some edge cases where it makes sense to do that in kind of DAX inside your model, but generally I do it that way. So calculated columns are static, right? So they're actually, well, they're not completely static. They're only calculated twice, right? So when it says calculated, that calculation only happens twice. Can anybody on YouTube tell me the 2 times when the calculated column is actually calculated? Okay, so because I don't see you there yet. Anyway, so I'll speak on. So yeah, folks, tell me when is it calculated? It's calculated every
During
time.
the model refresh.
Yeah, that was Eric, right?
Well,
Wait.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So one time when it's calculated is during the model refresh. What is the other time? It's really simple. Probably
when
simpler.
it's created.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
When it's defined, created, or redefined. I mean, if you change the formula, mm,
yeah.
but that is the only two times it gets calculated. So it's static. On the other hand, let's talk about measures. Oh my god, these are awesome. These are these are never pre-calculated. I mean, there might be some caching, but I wouldn't call it that. So they're dynamic, and that makes them amazing. I mean, calculated column just they're always going to stop at one point. When you want them to be dynamic, they're not going to be dynamic. A classic case is ranking. If you ranked your customers 1 to 100, and then you said, but I'm only concerned about the customers in US, or I'm only concerned about the customers who bought bicycles. So now I can't think beyond AdventureWorks. Then the measures are going to say, okay, cool, here's the number one customer in US buying bicycles. But columns, they cannot do that. I mean, so measures are dynamic just for that one reason. Just for that one reason alone, you should consider measures. Okay, looks like we have a caller. I don't know who it is. Hey, who's on? Let's see. Can I hear you? It does show you on. I can't seem to hear you right now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can. Because?
Yes. Yeah. Hi, Avi.
Okay,
How are
awesome.
you?
I am good. Where are you calling in from?
I was on my laptop and
No, no, no.
then
Like, where are
I
you
somehow
based?
managed to. I'm from New Delhi.
Oh, that's cool. I grew up there. Which part of New Delhi?
Rohini.
No kidding! Bloody hell! I grew up in Sector 9. I don't know why I'm writing it, but yeah, I grew up in Sector
Okay.
9.
I
That's
I
cool.
I stay in Sector 9.
Oh gosh.
Which apartment?
So I was in the. Oh man, it's gosh, what the heck was it called? Mm, I think it
Any
was
clue
the.
about Himalaya Public School?
Yes, that rings a bell. Yep, I think I would pass it every day. This is freaky. Hey, this is the power of YouTube. I love it, bringing people together. So Himalaya Public School, I would cross that almost every day. So
Uh-huh.
I was in the New Saraswati Society. I mean, there's so
Okay,
many out
that
there.
is close. That is so close.
Oh boy, wow, man. And where do you work?
I work at Netaji Subhash Place.
Okay, got it.
I'm a client account manager, and I
Yeah,
recently started watching out your videos since a month ago,
yeah,
and I find them really interesting. And then
yeah,
I was again trying to learn of stuff and bringing change in my organization where people
yeah.
calls me crazy. So
Yes, of course. We
again,
we spent the last hour talking about that. I think that's a good sign. That's a great sign.
but I
Yeah,
I think doing analysis over Power
yeah,
BI, it's great. And then I was trying to figure out this calculated columns. I watched some of the videos
yeah,
over measures,
yeah,
then how to create columns, and then
yeah.
whenever I enter out a column, let's suppose I use this concatenation thing or something
Hmm.
like that, I cannot make a measure for
Yeah.
that thing.
Yes. So yeah, that's good. So yeah, let's get in there and let me open up a real model, and that would
Hmm.
help us talk about that. So I'm gonna go here and learn Power BI. So this is good. We're gonna go deep into it because this is a good topic. Okay, so the model is opening up. So we talked about how calculated columns are static, measures are dynamic. Gosh, so what else was I gonna say? Um, oh yeah. So and the other big difference. So because part of it, I'll speak to kind of the YouTube audience as well, just so
Hmm.
we're covering all bases. So another big difference in calculated column is it is physically stored. Oops, where did that thing go? It is physically stored in the PBIX file. Okay, cool. And this is physically. Yeah. So let's. Okay, let's bring in a file. So in here, I don't remember. I may or may not have that example. If I say, so again, I'm going to cover the same ground, which is in my tutorial guide. So there's nothing new. You don't have to like take notes or anything. All you have to do is just go back and watch this video. But I'm hoping that sometimes, just hearing it again kind of cements that in. So the exact example that I walked through in that example is total sales amount, is that I create this calculated column. And I say total sales amount is sales amount plus sales amount, and then I save the file, and you see that even with this very small data set, the data size goes bigger, slightly bigger. And then I define a measure for this, which I think I deleted it, but it would be instead of this guy, let's try a new measure. So let's just go in here. Let's go to page 1, and we're gonna bring in by, let's say, calendar. So calendar by year. Oh, of course it's adding up the years. Silly goose. Don't summarize. Okay, so we got our years over here, and I'm gonna bring in the calculated column, total sales amount. And you can see that by the icon over here. It looks like kind of this. It's a little small on my screen, but yeah, you would notice it. So this is total sales amount. So this is my calculated column, right? And you can see its definition. So let's actually park that here. Park that here. So that's my calculated column. And I'm going to define a new measure, and new measure, and we'll go total sales amount measure equals, it'll be sum of sales amount and sum of tax amount. Let's try that. And what I'm going to do is stick that in a Word document as well. So the first is a calculated column. This one is a measure. And if you come back here, so again, you can see them side by side. You can see the icons are different. This one is a measure. This one is a calculated column. So this one, I'm going to add that here. And yeah, for a second, I thought they were different. Yeah, so they're identical, right? But again, under the hood, there are big differences. So again, the first difference we talked about, this one is static. It's only calculated when you refresh the model or you define and create it. And the odd thing is, this effect, you can't quite see in all measures. Like this one would feel dynamic, but it actually isn't. So again, if you want to see the effect, then create a ranking, and maybe we'll do that if it's going to help. And ranking is where you can see it clearly that it doesn't calculate again. So that's one. And the other thing is, if you go back here, when you see this column, this calculated column, and you scroll down, and we have about 58,000 rows, and you see all these values, every single one of these values, total sales amount, is stored in PBIX. Every single value is there. Now, of course, Power BI is very good at compression, so it uses compression algorithms to compress this stuff. So, I mean, yeah, if you add this column, the increase would be kind of small. But of course, if you keep doing it, if you add, instead of adding 100 measures, you add 100 columns, the difference would be staggering. So this one gets stored back in the file, increases its file size. The measure, on the other hand, is always dynamic. It's not stored in the file. Well, actually it is, but the only thing that's stored is this definition. Now, obviously, that is very, very small. So you can imagine if you had 100 measures, it's barely going to make any, even noticeable difference in the file size. So that's kind of the reasoning why you would prefer measures. And actually there are more. Increases file size. So talk about file size a little bit more. Why is that important? I mean, you can say, hey, I have a terabyte size disk. I don't care about file size. I have plenty of disk space. But these models are memory resident. That's the technology that Power BI uses. It tries to load the complete model in memory. So even if you would have near infinite disk space, people often have limited memory space. So it's a slippery slope. If you keep adding calculated columns, it's gonna become slow really, really fast. So I tell people that Power BI can handle hundreds of millions of rows, and they tell me, Avi, I loaded a 10,000 row data set, and it was slow as hell. And I know exactly what's going on. They probably have like lots and lots of columns in there. Okay, cool. But so I want to bring it back to where Vikas is getting stuck. Is that, hey, I define it. I can define it in calculated column, but I cannot define it in measure. And actually, this is going to be fun because I can see where it's headed. So first of all, you see that the syntax is different. So guys, so I love these questions where they start off simple, but they get more interesting. So why is it that this is a different syntax? Do you think I can define a measure this way? So Vikas or our experts are still hanging on the phone. So what can I define a measure with the same syntax? Would it work?
No, I think you told something about comparing each column by column in the measure thing, and so we have to
Yeah, let's try
relate
it.
those.
Let's try it. So we'll go new measure and oops. I messed it up. Okay, cool. So we go in here and we'll say total sales amount measure with column syntax. Oops. And it is this. Now, it was supposed to give me an error. Oh, there we go. All right, so it's squiggly lines, and I hit enter, and it should pop up with some error. Yep. So it doesn't work. Okay, so another question, and folks on YouTube, you can participate too. Why doesn't it work?
Yeah, this is what I get.
Why doesn't it work? I mean, it worked for a column. It doesn't work for a
It
measure.
it doesn't know the row context.
Doesn't have the row context. Bingo. So guys, I'll admit that these terms, row context, filter context, man, they scared me. It's yeah, it was they really scared me. No other way around it. So but it's really really simple. Frankly, when I figured out how simple it is, I was stunned. So calculated column have a row context, and these guys measures do not have a row context. Now you can create one. We will worry about that later. But for now, starting out, they don't have a row context. Now, what the heck is row context? Row context is simply the knowledge of current row. So if you look at a data set and you say, give me, let's go to our sales table. Oops, sorry. We're no, it's too trigger happy. Okay, so let's go to sales table. So when we go to this measure, and I put it in the wrong table, that's okay. Sales. So when we go look at this, oh gosh, sorry. Okay, let's go back to sales. Yes, okay, got everything lined up. So when we say in our measure, give me sales amount plus tax amount, it says which one. There are lots and lots of them, right? Because it doesn't have the concept of current row. It doesn't have it. It's like, oh, I have hundreds of these, thousands, millions of these. Which one are you talking about, Avi? I have no idea, right? So that's why it's stuck. But why does it work in calculated columns? Because, well, calculated columns, they have the row context. So imagine for calculated column, it's trying to calculate this number in this row, and when I say give me sales amount plus tax amount, it has the knowledge of the current row. It knows that, oh, I am on this row, so I am going to grab this one and this one. So that's what row context. Now we can manufacture a row context by the filter function. So we can go in here and we can, sorry, not filter function, X function. So X functions are iterators. They go row by row. Sum X, min X, max X, average X, standard deviation X, even filter, which doesn't have the X word, and my best understanding is top N is also an X function. So they all go row by row. So I can manufacture that, and I can say go row by row in sales, and then calculate this. And this All right, there we go. So yeah, and this is gonna give us the same response. So again, you can't quite use the same syntax there. So yeah, it's formatted differently, but it's giving us the same result. Now, of course, you could do this. It works, or you can do it the way that I did it, which is sum this and sum that. And now, why does this work? Not just sales amount plus tax amount, because we're not talking about a specific row. We're thinking in, even if it's one row, 100 row, million rows, we're saying the measure that, yep, go to all of them and sum it up. So it's not really asking it to know the row context. Cool. So we learned one thing, that the syntax is different, and a lot of it has to do with the row context not being there. By the way, this one, just to make things fair, right? I mean, right now it's like, hey, it's not fair. Calculated columns have the row context, but to make things fair, these guys do not have a built-in filter context. So there you see interesting challenges there, and this one, the filter context is always there. It can be there can be no filters, but the filter context is always there. And of course, to make things fun, you can transition row context into a filter context, but we're not going to get there. We don't really care about that stuff right now. I want to stay with the syntax. So the example that you used, Vikas, was concatenation.
Would it be possible if I can just share my screen for like a quick view?
Oh, absolutely.
I
Yes. So we can do that. Just make sure you don't have any sensitive data.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So while we're trying to set that up, so concatenation, if somebody's looking to do concatenation, that feels like shaping to me, and often I would do that in query editor. And let's see, how do I do that? Go ahead. You did share your screen, right? I can see it, the quarterly report.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let me bring it up here. Ooh, I'm trying to figure out how to do it. All right, so I got that. So let me finish my thought on the concatenation. So guys, let me go back to this guy. So again, calculated columns, you can do it in DAX, but I prefer to do it in the query editor, because if you've heard me talk, it's the kitchen of Power BI. That's where I like to clean shape transform data. And frankly, I prefer that. It doesn't matter much. In effect, it's the same. But when would you do something like this? If it's a text kind of column, if it's on a lookup table, then it's fair game. Then calculated columns, either using DAX or query editor, are perfectly okay. Well, 95% of the time. If it's any kind of math, any kind of calculation, that should probably be a measure. If you find yourself doing math using a calculated column, either in DAX or query editor, that's probably not the right result. All right, so we're looking at your screen, because show us what you got. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the thing that I always face is this error thing. I do not know how to take it away.
Yeah. Why don't you show the part where the measure and that sort of stuff, like where you're
Yeah.
trying to redefine it as a measure? And I don't know
Okay.
if show me what you got. But if it's indeed concatenation, maybe measure is not what you need. But let's look at it and see what's going on.
Okay.
Do you remember where that was?
Yeah. So in a scenario, let's suppose this is a good lead. So I would want to create a measure in which I want to differentiate this later part, and I could not create it up.
Okay. Hey.
Can you
Yeah.
see the screen? I
Yeah.
I think
Yes, I'm looking
uh,
at the screen.
I
You
think
got your
the
quarterly
second
report.
part. Let me switch it up. Sorry, my fault. Can you see the other screen?
Now we're looking at the query editor.
Yeah. So this was the thing. Can you see the good lead part which I'm
Yeah.
showing?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So over here, I wanted to differentiate both of this after the colon thing, and I tried to create a measure in which I can single out this later part,
Yeah.
and I could not create it up.
Yeah, so I mean, the way I see it is measures are not really usually great for text. You can have a lot of fun with them for text stuff. Text measures are a thing, but generally they're for math. So this one looks like more like a data problem thing. So what I would imagine is I would imagine two tables. One is lead, which will have all the leads, will have probably a key to differentiate primary key for each lead and details on the lead, the customer name, and blah blah blah, and all of that stuff. And then I would imagine a lookup table, which will say
Mm-hmm.
status, right? And they would be connected with a key. Let's not worry about the key for now. But the lookup table in status would have uh, like a summary status. So it'll just say good lead, order, open, that's it. And then it's going to have another column which will say lead status detail. And that's going to say this customer needed service or repair only, blah, 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 all of that. Maybe it's going to have one more column which something more detail. So if you think about it, and so guys, I often say I have a love-hate relationship with AdventureWorks. I kind of hate it because I'm sick and tired of looking at it, but it's good because it can represent a lot of business scenarios out there. So what we're doing here is not that much different than what I have in the tutorial on my YouTube channel and inside my course, where you have the sales table and which is connected to product, which has a category, subcategory, model name, and all of that stuff, right? So that's how I would imagine this. So yeah, I don't think this is a measure thing. This is just a kind of a model structure. What do you think about that?
Okay, I got your part. I
Awesome.
I was just in the learning phase, so I thought probably we can do it with the help of the measure.
Yeah.
This makes it clear.
Oh, awesome. Perfect. So, guys, certainly, I mean, I love measures, but I have become increasingly convinced that the shape of the model is perhaps more important. So, what I'm going to do is go back to our AdventureWorks here. Mm, Yeah, so guys, the very first thing that I do when I look at anybody's model, be it my student, client, is I say, show me the relationship view. That tells me more about the model than anything, right? So, and what do I look for? If it's one flat file, I'm usually not very happy. If nothing, you should have a calendar table. If you have a single date table, a date column, you should have a calendar table. And again, if you all you have to do is go to my channel and grab the watch the Ultimate Calendar playlist and grab that. So I expect that. And then if they do have multiple lookup tables, then I feel happier. And then if they're my students and they have stuff like this, oh boy, I can't kick them out of my course, but I'm not very happy because I go on endlessly about it. So guys, it's just very simple, but I think it's very important that you organize in this way, where your lookup tables are down below. Oh, sorry, your data tables are down below. Your lookup tables are up top, and I also make my lookup tables kind of taller like this. Even if they're small, even if they have three columns, I make them taller. Why do I do that? I do that because that is the ideal shape of the table. This table, ideally, the data table, is going to be, you want it to be lanky. Lanky. Now, lanky is tall and thin. So you want this lanky, tall, and thin. And these ones, maybe I should drag them and make them fatter because these guys are squat, right? So these guys are short and wide. So it's okay. I mean, as long as you don't get crazy, it's okay. It's possible to have 100 columns in your customer table. As long as they're being used, as long as they're providing information, as long as they're being used in the reports and all that stuff, it's okay. If you end up with like 100 columns in your data table, I don't know, you're probably missing a lookup table or two. There possibly are lookup tables which are flattened in there. Like if you start seeing like year, quarter, month, that's a dead giveaway. They're like, oh, dude, that should be in a lookup table calendar. So I'm looking for that. So again, so with Vikas, he was kind of going back and forth like measures, but I'm realizing that this shape is much more important. So start there. All right, Vikas. So you should be,
Just one
yeah,
last quick question.
yep.
So all I can see on the screen is it's a data for a single company. Okay,
Yeah,
so what if in a case you would want to relate the data of multiple companies
yeah,
having almost the similar fields over
yeah,
onto a same screen and
yeah,
compare between all of the data? Let's suppose this
yeah.
company it's doing good in this field and this company it is performing bad into this sort of field. So how to make that sort of model?
Okay, so this is brilliant. So I don't think Vikas realizes how insightful of a question it is, and guys, I think it's going to help everybody here. So this is a classic scenario where I have these. Oops, I lost my place. Where I have these two. Maybe they're let's multiple companies. Let's go with that. So we have, imagine that it's coming from two very different sources, right? Two very different sources. One is, found on the web, and the other is stored in our SQL server, right? And this is company A and company B, right? Or we can generalize it. I don't know, data set A and data set B, and we want to kind of compare the two. How do we do that? So I'm gonna show something. I'm gonna go on one path, which I don't think is the right path for you, Vikas, but we'll backtrack and go on the other path. But guys, I mean, this is where Power BI, I love it because it feels it's a journey. Oh gosh, I'm glad we had the conversation with James and Steve and Eric earlier. So yeah, the term that they use is journey. So I enjoy the journey, and you realize that often it's not about the right or wrong. It's not black or white. It's about the trade-offs. It's about understanding that, oh, if I go on this path I'll get this, if I go on that path I'll go on that. So now that we have generalized a problem, it's just, we don't really care. It's company data, it's data set A, data set B. Now if you look at this way, that's exact same scenario I have in AdventureWorks, and again, this is all covered in my YouTube tutorial, right? So and here the way I have combined and compared it is I bring one data table, I bring another data table, and then I hook it up with lookup tables. And the key here is that now you can slice and dice, compare and analyze them using the common lookup tables. So budget is connected to product and customer. So I can go here and let's just try duplicate this one. Page 2. Oh guys, I have no idea what time it is. You never know when it's you're having fun. Uh, okay, okay. I have a little meeting. All right, cool. So let's go over here. So remember, uh, budget. This guy is connected to product and calendar, but not anything else. Sales is connected to everything, so we wouldn't worry about that. So product and calendar. So if you go in here, and I'm gonna get rid of all of this stuff, and then you can show them side by side. You can see, and again, you can generalize these numbers, like some number from dataset A and some number from dataset B. And if you wanted to, you could even do math across that, whatever math you want to do. I mean, in this case, we're doing something simple, sales minus budget, but you could do that. So I can analyze it, and now that it's connected to calendar, I can go to any level of detail that I want. I can put the month in there, and I can see that. So all of that is going to work, and I can also analyze it by the other table, which was products. So I can do kind of category, and of course I can do both. I can pull in kind of year in here as well. Let's try it. Don't summarize. This is so annoying. There we go. Right. So you can. That's the way. Simply by bringing together two data sets and connecting them to common lookup tables, you can slice and dice them together. Did that kind of make sense? Because hopefully for folks on the YouTube as well.
Actually, what I meant out here was, let's suppose you're comparing out the sales thing.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you are having the same data for another
Yeah.
company.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So yeah, as I said, we're gonna walk on one path, but I don't think that's the right path for you. So this is a valid path, but it's not the right
mhm.
path for the scenario Vikas is describing. Why is that so? So the dead giveaway for me was, so we'll say approach one was sales versus budget. Let's call it that. Was I don't know if you guys noticed it, but man, it shone like a bright star in my eyes, where Vikas said they have. He said something about a similar structure, similar columns. Is that true? Is that hear it right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the if you
So
have
now,
yeah.
now let's
Hmm.
suppose I'm having two company and I
Yeah.
would want to compare the sales amount of both of the company.
Yeah.
So how can I relate that thing?
Yeah. So if this is the case, if you're getting in two data sets, possibly from different sources, doesn't even matter where they come from because query editor is going to take care of that. Then I would stack them. I would append them in a single table. And what I want you to imagine for a second is that instead of those two companies, you had two different product categories, right? So yeah, so imagine category is your country, and unfortunately we don't have like the product category here. Maybe we should bring it in. Let's try it. It's a new column, so I'm gonna just hack it for now, just to be quick, and we'll say category equals. Ooh, we could have done country. Let's try country equals related territories country. All right, so instead of company, we have country, and they have the same column, so you can just stack them together on top of the other, and your country is going to
Hmm.
differentiate your different company. And now you can should I do a new column? Let's just do. You can say oops, I actually needed one of those. Let's try. And now you would have your measure, and you can bring in the country. Let's try that. Oops. Okay, very messy. Let's try something else. Here. Ah, there we go. So, um, so if you bring the data together in a single table, and you retain a column which says which company is it. Now, either you have a single column there, or you would have a key there, like we have over here. So you would have a company key. And why would you? What's the difference? Like, when would you have just a single column with the name of the company versus a key? Well, you would have a key when that you don't just have name, you have additional information about the company. So let's say you have company name, company location, I don't know, company net revenue, number of employees, all of that stuff. If you have rich information, then you're going to make that a lookup table and connect it with your data table using a company key. But either way, you can just, once you have stacked your data sets together, so in this case, you're going to append them, it's going to be just one table. You can just go in there and say, hey, show me whatever measure, and you can drag in that company information, company name, or some other thing on there, and just see that separately. Does that help?
Yeah, that is great. I just had a quick idea in my mind. I can share it, and you can tell me if that can also work over here.
Okay.
I was thinking about likewise, you have got different tables, calendar, product, category.
Yeah.
So similarly, I was thinking about making different tables. Let's suppose company A table and all of the detail out there, and
Mm.
then company B table, all
Yeah.
of the detail, and then compare both of those tables,
Yeah.
connecting them somehow and relating it with the graphical representation.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the data set. What is this data set about?
It would be more about company sales. I just took out a dummy data set,
Yeah.
and it would be more of like the company sales and sort of leads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they, both of the companies, let's suppose there is a big company and it has
Yep.
got various clients.
Yep.
So
Happens all the
now,
time.
now the company would have to relate out which of the client is
Mm-hmm.
generating more sort of leads, which of
Yeah.
the client is
Yeah.
providing less sort of revenue. So in that
Yeah.
case, if you get a CSV file or something
Yeah.
from all of the companies,
Yeah.
and so in that thing you would have to relate, okay, I
Yeah.
have got the table 1 for company A, table 2 for company B, and you can name those tables with the company name or with a unique code, and
Yeah.
then fetch out the data from them.
Yeah, I mean, I
Some
definitely think that you would combine all the data, all the CSV you're getting, you would combine all of them into one file. And of course, if you have like different kinds of data, like there is one set of CSV file which has sales, another set of CSV file which has leads, but what you would do is put together all the sales CSV files from all the companies together. All right?
the problem out here was it was more of like, let's suppose I have a company name A,
Yeah.
so I've got various fields, but in the
Yeah.
company A I have got some of the additional fields as well.
Ah.
So I would have to manually relate each field with each other, and it would be very tough putting that
Mm,
data over onto a single sheet.
well,
So that is why
you're appending it. You,
Mhm.
you're appending the data, right? So you go into the query editor and using this guy. Okay, so let's just stay with me here, and I'll say I don't think it's going to be hard. It's going to be easy, but it does go back to this decision approach 1 2. So if they have very similar structure, then you append. Otherwise, you have to use a different approach. I still feel that appending is the best way to go for you. So even if so, again, it says similar, not same structure. They can be slightly
Yeah.
different, and we'll talk about that. So let's say you're appending those columns, and then and in one of these columns, even after you append, is going to have something like a company identifier or something like that. This is company number one or company ABC, a code, and then you would have just one table. It'll say company, and this is a lookup table, so company is going to be unique there. It's only going to appear once, and let's say it's going to have that ID, company one, name is Contoso, the manager's name, or something like that. Any other attributes which you care about, or maybe it's just the name. That's it. Maybe that's it, right? So you would have this, and you would connect all of your sales using your company key. Let's pretend this is a company key to this table, right? Now let's come back here and let's talk about this scenario. So I said if it's a similar structure, you should append, but it doesn't have to be the same. So what is going to happen? So let's say company. This is company A. Let's say company A data, and you have sales, right? So let's say it is date, sales amount, and maybe the agent who sold it, and maybe that's it, right? And then company company B is similar, so it's also going to have let's try four tables. So it also has date, it also has sales dollar. Maybe they don't have agents, maybe it's just one guy, I don't know. And then it has something else. Let's see what else could be unique about sales. Maybe it has kind of channel.
Customer.
um yeah, well, could be customer. Yeah, customer. Maybe channel. So these guys, the first people are only selling through one channel. That's why they don't have that, and they only sell through internet. And these folks in the channel, they sell through internet, and they sell through phone, and they sell through in-person booths, and a whole lot of other things, right? But anyway, frankly, the details don't matter. The key is that the data set is similar but not same. Now what's going to happen when you append it? So because you want to, what would I get for my table? What columns would it have?
Sales would be one,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
then we can say a date. Date is the common one.
Yep. Or what else?
And in the first one, we have got agent, and in the second one, we have got the customer.
Yeah. So
So
it will get both, and it'll get channel as well. But what would the data look like? Well, where it's coming from this table, let's see if we can do something here. And this one is green. When it's coming from this one, date sales agent, this would have data, and when it's coming from the other file, we would have data for date and sales and not for the agent, and we would have data for this. Now, guys, I hadn't realized this as well, because if you think about it, what is happening here? Let's go back to this approach. And what did I say here? I said here that you use separate tables. So imagine this is company A, company B, and the way to analyze it is using the common lookup tables, right? So whatever's in the common, you can analyze it that way. And actually, I meant to show it, but I messed up. Is that as long as I stay within the common lookup tables, which is calendar and product, I'm good. But if I go outside of that, what happens? It gets messed up. So notice that now I mean, sales is applicable, right? Sales applies to country, but this one, it has got the repeating number pattern, so it doesn't apply. It doesn't apply, right? We have the same scenario here. So when you append the data set, all the stuff that's common, you can slice and dice and compare that to death. So you can, in this case, with date and sales in the common one, you can say, yep, company A, company B, show me how by year, how by month, all of that you've done. But if you try looking at agent, it only makes sense that it wouldn't show. I mean, it will show you company A data, but not B data. Or if you look at customer channel, it'll not show company A, company B. But I still feel that just appending it is the right approach for you, and creating a
And
lookup company table. Yeah.
and once we would append it, so let's suppose we get a new data set the next week. So
Yeah.
if you're gonna just put in there, it's automatically gonna take that data and would append it, or again we would
Yeah.
have to follow the same
Yes.
process.
Oh no, I mean, yeah. So it's just gonna, you just click refresh, and it's gonna be magic.
Got it,
So
got it, got it.
typically, if
That's great.
it's CSV file, if it's a single CSV file which is being overridden, you just want to connect to that. If it's a set of CSV file where they're dropping in CSV files in a folder, then you point to a folder, and every time it gets a new file, it's going to be sucked in. I know, man. It's like magical the first time you experience this. Whew. All right, good stuff, because that
Just one
was
thing on your notes
Thank you
there.
so much for your help.
Just go back to your notes.
absolutely.
This really solved the problem.
All right, great. Sorry, was it something else on the phone?
It's James. Can you hear me, Avi?
Yes, I can.
Just go back to your notes, please.
Okay, there we are. Yeah.
It's slow for me. Sorry.
Okay, no worries.
But in both those tables, oh yeah, company B, you just need a company ID column.
Oh, that's true.
Um,
Yes. So my bad. So when you combine, make sure that you have the ID column, and usually if you're grabbing stuff from files and stuff, it happens automatically. Otherwise, it's pretty easy to do. So yeah. So this is going to say A, B, B. Thank you.
sure.
All right. So, guys, those were really good questions. I love these ones because I know that they don't just help that one person. Yeah, it's kind of the same concepts, and we talked about it in this call today as well. So, guys, it's the simple stuff which, if you master, it really kind of makes everything else easier. So you can be writing. You know what? I just want to. So we were talking about how showing is better than kind of talking about it. I just want to go to this. So the last video that I did, RankX, this came from a question in table similar to what Ankit Learn Power BI group, and it had provided. Now this one is a. Let me go back, see if we can go to the screenshot of that. Nope. Close. There we go. Let's try it. He. Yeah. So Ankit had sent this in, and he said, "Hey, I'm trying to do this." And he said that he had actually managed to do this in R, which is crazy. But of course, there's nothing like DAX measures because they're ultimately flexible. And yeah, and this is what he had to say. He said, "Hey, I was thinking about a long nested DAX expression, but yeah, so a lot of times if you kind of go out there in the wild world of Power BI, you can convince yourself that you got to be a DAX ninja. So guys, the truth about me is, if I look at the guys like Marco Russo, Alberto Ferrari, I probably know 5%. That may be an exaggeration as well of what they do, but I feel like often you don't need that. It's a simple stuff which is important. Now, what's odd for me, I still struggle with this a little bit, is that why is the simple stuff so hard? Like even I think row context, filter context, I think those concepts in themselves are simple, but it feels hard. I do have a theory. It might be a little crazy, but I do strongly believe that as long as you think it's hard, it's always going to stay hard. Kind of one of those boo manifestation thing, but that's what it is. All right, let's see if there are any other questions on there. Jen did say that she had almost an exact scenario with a lookup table and statuses, so that's great. Let's see. So folks on YouTube, let's do a last call. The crowd has thinned out a bit, but that's good. And of course, if you are part of the talkpowerbi.com and if you want to call in and chat with me, you can do that as well. Just if you sign up for Talk Power BI, wait, where's that page? Yeah, just go to talkpowerbi.com. So let's just do last call there. I think I already missed a little bit of my next meeting. All right. Manuel is saying, are you familiar with clustering in Power BI? Jen says adios. That's great. So clustering, yeah, let me try it. And maybe I would need some help. Okay, not this, but let's go in our AdventureWorks data and let's try to build us a cluster. So let's go scatter and we're gonna say sales and let's do order count and we're gonna do it by, I'm not really sure, by country, or let's just do product, something detailed, product name, model name. Let's try that. Okay, not very interesting, but after all, it's AdventureWorks. So yeah, there's a way to cluster things here. Maybe I would need some help. Cluster. Okay, I would probably not. Yeah, Manuel, do you have help for me? Click the three dots. All right, cool. Automatically find clusters. Yeah. So obviously I'm not very familiar with it. Yeah, I don't know. Clusters a model name. Let's try it. Number of customers auto. I'm not really sure what logic it uses. Let's see what we get. Actually, I'm kind of impressed. I mean, it did seem to have done the job right. So these two, it put it in one cluster 7, and this one is off on its own, and these ones are kind of grouped together, and there's a blue kind of cluster over here. Boy, I'm having fun with this. So let's see. So cluster, it creates this. What can I do with this? Edit clusters. There we go. Oh, this is nice. I like it. I think you can name them, and that would be real power. So cluster, like this blue cluster, whatever that was, would it be nice to see the color when I edit clusters as well. And you can say let's go back to this. So cluster 1 is, can I rename it? Oh shoot, no, don't tell me I can't I can't rename it, thank God. So let's say cluster 1, and we can say, I don't know, the mid-tier products or something like that. You can develop kind of a hierarchy of, you can say, hey, these are our top products and so forth. So yeah, seems seems really, really cool. I wouldn't go too crazy. I mean, so this is great. This is great for exploration, which is awesome. But I will say that uh, so Manuel, it all depends on kind of which stage you're at. But for general folks, I'll say so. Eric had mentioned his favorite author, which I deeply admire as well, Stephen Few. He's amazing, and the mantra there is less is more. So I think if you just stick with kind of column chart, bar charts, just tables or cards and line charts, it's amazing how much power that can have because simplicity is the best way to go. But yeah, this seems pretty cool. So Manuel, well, obviously I wasn't very familiar with it, but I think I tried it out once in a while. But I think it's pretty cool. You can kind of control the number of clusters, and then if you do see clusters, you can name them, and I think that's where it's gonna get its real power. What happened to my name? Didn't I rename it? Edit clusters. Oh, I kind of mid-tier. Perfect. So, yeah, so once you name it that way, and of course maybe you set with fewer clusters, 3 or something, and then you can tell a story, and you can say, oh, look at our mid-tier guys, and you can click on that and it gets highlighted. So thank you for reminding me of this feature and others as well. Perfect. All right, we got these. Thanks. All right, guys, so we're going to sign off for now. Boy, James is still hanging on, but yeah, big thanks, of course, to all the panelists who were there today. This was a topic near and dear to my heart, and from all the feedback, all the comments you guys had, clearly it stuck a chord with you guys as well. We'll see you next Friday on the next episode of Talk Power BI. Take care. Power on.